The prairie don't whisper your name unless you've bled into its dirt. That's what they said about Sam Cade, though no one said it near him. Folks in Silver Hollow didn't talk to Sam. They watched. They whispered. They crossed the street when he came to town, which wasn't often. He came only for nails or salt or horse liniment, and always at dusk, when the sun painted the streets copper and shadows made it easier to forget a man's face. Sam lived alone on 80 wind-bitten acres 3 miles east of town. No wife, no children, just the land and the ghosts, both of which he tended with quiet devotion. His house leaned slightly westward, like it had grown tired of standing straight. Fence posts sagged, the well creaked, but the barn stood tall, red and proud, rebuilt long after the fire that had made him a pariah. He didn't speak of the fire, not when the old ranch wives dropped their eyes, not when the preacher stopped coming, not even when he dreamed of it, a wall of flame, screaming horses, and the shape of his wife on the other side of it all, swallowed before he could reach her. At dawn, Sam saddled his sorrel mare, Glory, and rode the southern fence line. He didn't need to. Nothing watered these parts anymore. But it was habit, and habit is the last refuge for a man who's lost his name. The wind that morning was sharp, full of whispers. Not voices, just the kind of sound that tugged at memories best left buried. He paused when he saw it. A feather tied to a broken fence post with a scrap of rawhide. Hawk, maybe. Maybe not. He didn't touch it. Just stared. Eyes narrowed. It hadn't been there yesterday. He didn't find the prints until later, when he came around the north pasture. 10 sets, barefoot or in warm moccasins. Wide spacing, light steps, moving with the kind of grace most folks don't learn from books or boots. Sam stood still a long while. Not fear exactly. Something colder. Something more hollow. He went back to the house, stoked the fire, and waited. It was near midnight when they came. Lightning had begun to ripple across the sky, a quiet warning stitched into the dark. Thunder grumbled like old men behind locked doors. Sam sat on the porch, Winchester across his lap, though it didn't feel like a weapon in that moment, more like a memory. Then he saw them, shadows first, spilling over the ridgeline like dusk had grown legs. 10 figures. They didn't come fast, didn't come loud. They walked with weariness, their bodies lean, wrapped in weather-worn blankets and blood crusted at the seams. Eyes sharp, scanning. Their leader, taller than the rest, hawk-nosed, with a scar down his cheek like a branch had clawed him years ago, stepped forward. Sam didn't move. He felt no panic, just the rush of something old rising in his throat. The man raised a hand, not in threat, in greeting. Sam stood, walked off the porch, boots crunching gravel like distant gunfire. "I don't got much," he said. The man didn't answer, just looked past him to the barn. Sam glanced over his shoulder. The barn was warm, dry, half full of hay. "You can sleep in there, if you're quiet." A nod. That was all. They moved past him, one by one. Men, a few women, 2 children, one barely old enough to walk, wrapped tight against the cold. No one spoke, not even the little one. Sam watched them disappear into the barn like a dream retreating at dawn. He sat up all night, the fire burning low and the Winchester across his knees. But sleep didn't find him, and neither did fear. What found him was a memory of another fire, another group of Apaches, different or maybe the same, riding down in a Silver Hollow years ago. Tempers had run hot. Sam had stayed behind. His wife, Clara, had begged him not to fight, so he didn't. But others did, and when the barn burned that night, with 2 children and a deputy inside, the town looked for a scapegoat. Found Sam Cade, silent and intact, ash on his boots, but no blood on his hands. He tried to speak. They hadn't listened. A coward, they called him. A traitor. A man who let boys burn so he could protect himself. No one asked what he had lost. He hadn't spoken since. Not in any way that mattered. Lightning struck a nearby tree just before dawn, sending smoke twisting into the sky. Sam stood, back aching, and walked to the barn. He pushed the door open slow, half expecting the place to be empty. But they were there, sleeping in silence. The older man sat awake, his scar catching the light. He didn't move, didn't speak, just nodded again. Sam nodded back. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was something. He stepped outside, feeling the morning wind press against his skin. Something in the air had shifted. The prairie didn't whisper today. It listened. And far off, riding hard from town, a dust cloud formed. Someone was coming. The wind rose. The feathers still hung on the fence post, trembling like it knew what was about to unfold. At sunrise, the ranch breathed different. The air carried the scent of ash and cedar smoke, soft beneath the usual iron tang of dry earth. Sam Cade stood in the doorway of the barn, arms crossed, watching 10 strangers stir in the golden light. They moved like ghosts relearning their bodies, careful, quiet, as if loudness might invite pain. Blankets pulled tighter. Eyes darted. The children pressed close to their mothers. None asked for anything, and none offered thanks. Sam didn't expect it. He didn't offer breakfast. Trust, he knew, had to be earned with something heavier than food. The scarred man, tall, deliberate, remained the center of their gravity. He moved with the poise of someone who had led too long. His name hadn't been offered, but Sam had heard names like it whispered on wind-blown trails. Taza, maybe, a name meant to strike and fade. When he met Sam's gaze, there was no anger in it, no fear, just appraisal, the kind that measured not muscle but soul. Later that morning, while repairing a buckled section of fence near the west pasture, Sam found a rhythm in the work. Hammer, pull, twist, the same pattern that had carried him through grief, through exile. When he looked up, the Apache man stood a few yards away, holding a rail. Without a word, he offered it forward. Sam took it. Their hands touched, briefly, rough calluses brushing like bark against bark. No speech followed, but they set the next post together. The hours passed quiet. One of the boys, 12, maybe, balanced on the rails with the grace of a coyote pup, and the youngest girl sat beneath a cottonwood, whittling something with a rusted nail. Sam watched her work and felt the prickle of something long buried, stirring in his chest. That evening, he left a piece of pine wood and a sharper blade near the barn door. When he returned at dawn, they were gone. In their place, a small carved horse, rough but honest. He found Maggie Ray on his porch 3 days later. Her silhouette was unmistakable. Broad hat, blue skirt dusted at the hem, eyes like river stones, calm on the surface, dangerous underneath. She said nothing at first, just stared. "You got 10 ghosts in your barn," she finally said. Sam leaned against the post. "They're breathing. You know what this means." He nodded. "I do." She stepped forward, close enough for him to smell lavender, soap, and horse sweat. "And you're still doing it." They needed dry ground. Her face softened just slightly. "You always did have a broken heart for lost things." Before she left, she reached out, just a fingertip against his arm, like testing if a wound still stung. Then she turned and walked back down the trail. He watched her go, the silence between them louder than any sermon. That night, the air felt heavier, the kind of weight that came before storms or judgment. Sam sat on the porch, carving a sliver of cedar into something shapeless, the barn aglow with the warm breath of quiet lives inside. He heard the moving, whispering. One of the women sang something low and winding, like a lullaby built from canyon echoes. It didn't need translation. He remembered the fire again. The old one. The one that took Clara. He remembered standing outside the barn, arms around her waist, holding her back while screams echoed within. He hadn't gone in. She had begged him not to. But still, the town saw the smoke, saw the ash on his coat, and called him coward. And maybe they were right. A distant rumble jolted him from thought. Not thunder. Hooves. 6 riders. Their torches cut through the dusk like fireflies dipped in menace. Sam didn't reach for the Winchester. He simply stood, waiting. Mayer held Brewster Road in front, face sharp beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Beside him were men Sam recognized. John Markley, Wes Crowley, 2 young deputies with more pride than sense. "You got guests, Kate," Brewster called, voice flat. "They're resting. They're fugitives," Markley snapped. "Walked off the reservation after assaulting a patrol." "They didn't assault nobody," Sam said. "They're hurt. Hungry. They're Apache." Brewster dismounted slowly, spurs hissing. "You forget who you are, Kate." Sam's voice didn't rise. "I'm remembering." Brewster came closer. "Don't make this a thing." We let you keep your land when everyone said we shouldn't. We looked the other way when you let that barn burn." Sam's jaw flexed. "I didn't let anything burn," he said, each word a stone. "Then do the right thing now," Brewster said. "Hand them over." In the barn, a door creaked. Taza stood in the shadows, watching. Behind him, two of the boys stepped forward, silent as dusk. Sam didn't look back. "I won't. You planning to fight us, old man?" "I'm planning to stand." Brewster spat. "You were always too soft to be useful. Should have buried you with her." Sam didn't flinch. From behind the barn came a quiet movement. Maggie Ray stepped into the light, rifle slung low, not raised. Her presence was quiet as prayer, but it thundered. "I don't think you're going to shoot anyone in front of the schoolteacher," she said. Brewster turned, startled. "This don't concern you." "It does now." The standoff stretched, brittle as ice. Then the smallest Apache girl walked out from the barn and reached for Sam's hand. His fingers closed around hers without thought. Brewster's eyes narrowed. "You've gone soft for ghosts and savages." "No," Sam said, voice thick. "I've just stopped hiding." Silence swallowed the moment. Then Brewster turned, mounted, and said nothing more. The others followed. As their shadows vanished, the prairie exhaled. Sam stood long after they were gone, the girl's hand still in his. In that silence, something shifted, not in the town, but in him. He had stood. He hadn't burned. And maybe that was enough for now. The wind came soft the next morning, like breath through a chapel. Sam stood barefoot on the porch, coffee cooling in his hand, watching the horizon stir. The girl, Elsie, he learned her name was, chased a threadbare cloth across the yard, her laughter a tiny rebellion against the silence the land had worn for too long. Her mother watched from the barn shadow, arms folded, the set of her jaw softening each time Elsie turned back, just to be sure she hadn't vanished. Taza stood by the fence, fixing a broken hinge. He worked without sound, his eyes scanning the distant hills more often than the task before him. His presence was heavy, a weight that steadied the air. Sam recognized that kind of burden, the kind that keeps a man from sleeping too deep or smiling too wide. Word would be spreading in Silver Hollow like a prairie fire in dry season. By noon, dust rose on the northern trail. 2 riders this time, not armed men but townsfolk. Preacher Langley and old Nettie Brooks. Sam stepped down off the porch, chest tight, boots silent on the dirt. He didn't meet them halfway. He stood and waited, spine straight, as the cottonwood he planted the year Clara died. Nettie, wrinkled and sunbrowned, didn't dismount. Her voice cracked like old paper. "You got them people still here?" "I do," Sam said. Langley shifted beside her, thumb hooked in his belt. "Town's uneasy." "They usually are," Sam replied. "They're talking about the law," Langley said. "About taking sides." "I've taken mine." Nettie frowned, then softened. "You always did have a stubborn streak. Like your father." Sam glanced at her. "My father never stood for anyone but himself." "Maybe, but he built his fences straight." She paused. "Word is they're sending riders from Fort Casper." "Not for a talk." Sam looked toward the barn. Taza stood in the doorway now, watching the exchange without moving. "You plan to fight soldiers, Sam?" Langley asked gently. "I plan to protect who I've given shelter." "They won't see it that way." "They rarely do." Langley sighed. "They'll be here tomorrow. Maybe the day after." "I reckon they will." Nettie squinted. "And what are we supposed to tell the town?" Sam took a long breath, then looked at her. "Tell them the fire didn't burn everything. Some things stayed standing." That night, he told Taza. The Apache listened without interruption, only a brief flare in his eyes betraying the depth of what he felt. When Sam finished, Taza looked toward the stars. They glimmered soft above the barn, as if the sky had drawn close to hear them. "We've run far," Taza said at last, voice like sand and rain. "But we have children now. We cannot run again." "You don't have to." "We cannot stay either." Sam's jaw tightened. "If you go now, they'll find you easy. If you stay, I'll stand beside you." Taza studied him. "You've lost for us once already." "I did," Sam said, the words slow and heavy. "But I won't again." He offered his hand. Taza hesitated, then clasped it. Come morning, the barn was busy. Sam gave tools to the older boys, who nailed shutters over gaps and fixed the back door to swing smooth. Maggie Ray returned without being called. She brought bandages, food, her old hunting rifle, and a kind of quiet fire Sam hadn't seen in her eyes since they were young enough to pretend it forever. They stood in the kitchen, the two of them, while she rolled dough and he boiled coffee. Silence held between them, but it wasn't heavy now. It was full. "I never thought I'd see you do this," she said. He wiped flour from the counter. "I didn't think I still could." She met his gaze. "You've changed. Maybe I remembered something." "What?" "That a man who loses everything can still choose what he stands for." Late that afternoon, Sam rode into town. Not to plead, not to beg, just to be seen. He tied Glory outside the Mercantile and walked slow through the center of Silver Hollow. Eyes followed. No one spoke. A boy dropped a bucket. Someone drew a curtain. He nodded to Nettie, tipped his hat to Langley. Then he turned, mounted, and rode back with the slow grace of a man not afraid to be noticed. That night, thunder rolled on the horizon, not from the sky, but from distant hooves. The moon watched high and full, cloaking the world in silver and dread. At dawn, the soldiers came. A captain led them, clean-shaven, straight-backed, flanked by 24 men with cold eyes and polished boots. They dismounted at the edge of the property, rifles unshouldered but not raised. Sam waited with Taza, Maggie, and the children just beyond the barn. "I'm Captain Hargrove," the officer said, voice dry. "We've come for the fugitives." "They're not fugitives," Sam replied. "They're listed deserters and trespassers. They're guests." Hargrove's jaw tensed. "You're obstructing federal law." Sam stepped forward. "I'm obstructing cruelty." The soldiers shifted, fingers twitching on triggers. The children huddled close. One of the women began to hum, a slow chant older than words. Taza raised a hand, calm and firm. "We will leave with dignity, but we will not return to chains." "You have no choice," Hargrove said. Sam drew a breath that reached his heels. "Yes, they do." And with that, Maggie Ray stepped forward beside him. Then Langley, walking from the trees where he'd been waiting in secret. Then Nettie, her cane striking each step like a drumbeat of defiance. One by one, others from town appeared. Not many, but enough. A line, a choice, not with rifles, but with presence. The captain's face darkened. "You'd stand against your own?" "We're standing with what's right," Sam said. And in the stillness that followed, something changed. The soldiers didn't move. One by one, the rifles lowered. Captain Hargrove stared long and hard at Sam, then at the line of townsfolk. Finally, he turned to his men. "We're done here." Boots turned. Dust rose. And just like that, they were gone. Sam stood in silence, his breath catching like a child's. Taza placed a hand on his shoulder. Neither spoke. Later, after the sun fell and supper had filled every hollow belly, Sam sat beside the barn with Elsie in his lap. She handed him another carved horse, finer this time. He smiled, and it didn't hurt. He looked to the stars and spoke to them like old friends. "You don't have to be forgiven to start again," he whispered. And the prairie, that old wide soul, finally whispered his name back. "You stood. That's enough. That's everything."